Everyone, thank you for joining us. We're waiting for a few more people to log on, and then we will get started. Glad to have you with us today. Yep. Maybe one more minute. Okay, thank you all for being here at 10 a.m. on Friday morning. Happy Friday. I'm Elia Hopkins with the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, and we are going to start our first ever webinar. Glad you're with us. Before we start, you'll see on your upper right-hand corner an arrow. If you click that arrow, it opens a dashboard, and that has a question box in it. That's where you'll want to type questions that you want to ask of the panelists. The microphones are off, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. We're just going to use the typed questions to provide answers, and that allows us to get back to you. If we don't answer your question specifically, we will definitely respond via email after the webinar. We have with us today an esteemed panel of friends of our chamber, certainly. Leslie Weber is the MCCC chair-elect. She's the director of campus and government and community affairs at Johns Hopkins. John Stierhoff is an MCCC board member. He is a partner with Venable, and we work closely with John and his team in Annapolis during the legislative session and really throughout the year to advance policies that remove barriers and create opportunities for our members. Gigi Godwin is our president and CEO, and very passionate about this upcoming election, as you will soon hear. And of course, I am Elia Hopkins, Vice President of Government Relations and Communications. Today in the webinar, we're going to cover some basic things about the primary election coming up on June 26th. I will let you know that this is being recorded, and so if you find today's session helpful and you want other people to know about it, we'll send a link where you can then forward it on to them. And we may do this session again to encourage people to understand what's happening. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about why this election is unique and different and important. We'll talk about what it means to be in a system that's a closed primary. And of course, the primary is on June 26th. We will point out some key races that we're following and that we think you might want to pay attention to, where your vote will count and will make a difference, particularly for you as employers and residents of Montgomery County. And of course, we'll be taking questions throughout. So right now, I'd like to turn the mic over to Leslie Weber, who's going to talk a little bit about the 2018 elections. It's okay right there.
Thank you, Elia. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I want to talk for a second about an overview of some recent voting trends and why we think it's important to encourage all of you to participate. So in the recent records, people have gone back and reviewed and taken a look at who participates typically in primary elections in Montgomery County. Although we're a county of over 1 million residents, the number of registered voters is significantly smaller. And then from that portion, the number of folks who are registered as Democrats is smaller still. And then you're down to approximately 90,000 people who in the last 2 primary election cycles participated in the Democratic primary. To say it another way, fewer than 10% of the residents of Montgomery County have been making decisions about our political leadership that affect all of us and our collective future. If you have not been one of those 90,000 Democratic primary voters in the last few cycles, we're going to have instructions for you at the end of this program about how to register, or if you've been registered as an independent or a member of another party, perhaps to consider how to change your party registration in advance of the June 26th primary. The local and state officials that we elect have a tremendous impact on the way we as individuals certainly experience the county, but most importantly for today's discussion, how our businesses grow and succeed. Our focus today is going to be on these state and local races, although we're going to touch on the federal races for Senate and the congressional districts as well. Because of the new term limit law that is now in effect and the opportunity to take advantage of public financing, there are many open seats at the local and state level and many candidates who have decided to jump into the race because they now have the means through public financing to actually run a campaign. It really is a historic number of candidates. And part of our goal today is to give you some tips on how to navigate your way through these long ballots that you're going to see in June. It's a really a brand new opportunity. Our generation certainly has never seen this number of opportunities to choose from new elected leaders. And we're really hoping that we can identify some candidates and get some folks elected to office who will support business growth and success. At all levels, local, state, and federal, there are contested races in the Democratic primary. And I think we're going to throw a list of these offices up for you on the screen so you can see just what's at stake during this election. We have certainly the race for the county executive to replace retiring county council member Ike Leggett. We have the county council. It's a 9-member body. There are 4 at-large seats. 3 of those are being vacated because of term limits, and then there are 5 district seats as well. Moving up the ballot, if you will, to the state level, we have 8 Maryland General Legislative Districts, 8 legislative districts to the Maryland General Assembly in Montgomery County. There's a senator in each one of them and 3 delegates. So you're talking about a lot of people whose names are going to appear on the ballots. And because some of those folks have decided to pursue offices at the local or the federal level, that has opened up even more seats, even though the members of the state assembly are not subject to term limits like our local officials are. Moving up there, we also have a gubernatorial race. There are Democratic candidates in a very active primary for governor, and certainly then we'll see, for those of you who might be Republicans, you're going to see Governor Hogan's name on the ballot as well. And then, of course, as is true every 2 years, all of our Maryland congressional members of the House of Representatives are up for re-election, and we also have a Senate seat this year. So we are really hoping that we can provide some helpful information to you today on how to navigate your ballots. If you think about it, with all these races and all these candidates, as well as things like the Register of Wills and the Clerk of Courts and the Sheriff, you might see over 100 names on your ballot. And we want to give you some tools to make sure that you can make sense of all those individuals. We really hope to have people who are active as employers in the county participate in this race. All of the chatter so far has been about endorsements from environmental groups, from unions, from civic organizations, and it's an opportunity for business people to participate as well. You're going to hear more about this throughout the presentation, and so I'm going to turn things over now to Gigi Godwin, President and CEO of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, and Gigi's going to talk to you a little bit further about the specifics of our closed primary system.
Thank you, Leslie, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. As a reminder, MCCC is an advocacy organization. We are policy over politics. We do not endorse candidates. We are not R's or D's. In fact, we often say we are C for commerce. But in a closed primary with many candidates, it is so important to understand how the system works. In Maryland, you must be registered in a recognized party to vote in that party's primary election. Did you know that the primary is on June 26th, less than 70 days from today? In Montgomery County, the Democratic nominee typically prevails in the general election in November. Therefore, it is important to nominate a candidate who understands the importance of growing our economy. If you are not registered to vote, the deadline to register is June 5th. If you are independent, unaffiliated, or registered as anything other than a Democrat, you can change your registration by June 5th. Also, given that this primary is being held in the summer, anyone is able to request an absentee ballot, but that request must be received by June 19th. The primary is June 26th. All the information is available on the user-friendly State Board of Elections website, and we have that information available on our website as well. We have a handout with this presentation that has links to the websites where you can register and request absentee ballots. Your participation, your vote, will determine who will be the next county executive and the next county council, which in turn will impact your cost of living. That means your property taxes, your income tax, your cost of doing business with the energy tax and employment costs, and the balance between growing the tax base and providing the needed services. This is why this election matters to you and to all of us.
Does anybody have any questions at this point of any of the just the nature of the overall election and the closed primary system? Again, as Gigi mentioned, there's a handout associated with this, and of course on our website, hyperlinks to all the specific parts of the Board of Elections website. It is pretty intuitive. On that top menu bar, you can see voter registration and voting, those last two columns, where you can get a lot of the links to the specifics. All right, so moving on, as you can imagine, even for us at MCCC, this is a lot to monitor and a lot to keep track of. Right here in Rockville, here are some visuals for you. We have the County Executive Office building, and in the lower left-hand corner is a picture of the council hearing room on the 3rd floor, which may be familiar to those of you who have come to testify or watched some of the proceedings of public hearings on the cable channels. I put these pictures up here because at MCCC, in the primary, we are really focused on the county executive race and the Montgomery County at-large races. There are, as Leslie mentioned, many candidates have come out, and there are 33 Democrats running for the 4 at-large seats. We also are focusing on these 2 races because any registered Democrat can vote in both of these Montgomery County Executive and County at-large races. Most importantly, the winners of the primary nominations go forward to the general election, and whoever prevails in November, the county council members pass laws and the county executive implements laws that impact you as a resident and a business person in Montgomery County. You know, a lot of people aren't necessarily familiar with the county government, so we're just going to take a minute to show you what the duties and responsibilities of a couple of these offices are. After all, we are hiring the next CEO of Montgomery County, so what does the county executive do? Well, he oversees the enforcement of the laws, he provides direction to all the departments, and importantly, he or she appoints all of the directors. Those are all political appointees, transportation, permitting services, environmental protection, and that county executive has a lot of power in setting the tone of who runs those departments that interface with the public. On the other side of the street, in the legislative body, is the county council. The 9 members of the county council have the main responsibility of passing the budget that the county executive prepares for them and submits to them. So they do try to work well together. They're a little bit of a check and balance, but at the end of the day, while the county executive proposes an operating and capital budget and negotiates a lot of the contracts on behalf of the county, the council is really responsible to pass a budget. The other main responsibility of council members is to be the final say and make major decisions on land use, which, as we all know, is important in a county that continues to have growth, and a third of it is set aside for the agricultural reserve. So the general plan, the master plan, sector plans are all very important. We've seen when the county council became a full-time position, we've seen them also get very engaged in proposing and passing legislation on any number of topics, but notably in recent years, they've passed a number of local mandates for employers who have employees in Montgomery County, and that has created a lot of work for us and a lot of compliance on your end as businesses. So we hope that we can encourage many of these candidates to think about business as constituents and business as an important part of our community that really helps create opportunities. So as we mentioned at the top, anybody can vote in the at-large races, but the 5 districts for the county council, you have to live in the area where that district is. And here's a map that shows the 5 districts in Montgomery County. They're called councilmanic districts. You will want to figure out which part of the county you live in, and if you're close to one of the borders, type in your address to find out, because in each of those races, there are also contested primaries. We'll talk more about how to get more information about individual candidates later in the presentation. At this point, does anyone have any questions about the county executive or county council races? If not, I'll turn it over to John Stierhoff, who's going to talk about some of the races for statewide office.
Good morning. So in addition to the Montgomery County Executive, the council seats, the at-large Montgomery County Council seats, there are also significant races for state offices, the governor, and in the Maryland General Assembly, the senators and delegates. Maryland, as previously was noted, has 47 legislative districts, and unlike most other states, each of the 47 districts has 1 senator, and embedded within that same district are 3 delegates. Many other states that you may have come from have separate districts for delegates and senators in the legislature. But first, the governor's race. On the Republican side, Governor Hogan is unopposed. In fact, on the money side of that race, through mid-January, when the most recent campaign finance reports were due, Governor Hogan and his Lieutenant Governor, Boyd Rutherford, had more cash on hand, $9,038,000, than all of his 7 Democratic challengers combined. Governor Hogan's account alone had more than $8 million in it. On the Democratic side, there are 7 candidates and approximately 2 million Democratic voters. But in the 2014 gubernatorial primary, just over 458,000 Democrats voted. So most of the candidates have designed plans to win with no more than 35% of the vote, and some pundits believe it could be as low as 25%. So as few as 125,000 to 150,000 votes could be the number of votes needed to win the primary. Maryland has had multiple candidates before, but never so many that could actually win. Think about that. In 2014, the 2014 general election, Ike Leggett received 167,52 votes, 130,500 of them on election day itself. The last time so many Democrats participated in the gubernatorial primary was in 1966, when George Mahoney won with 30% of the vote, 148,446 votes. He beat the second place finisher, Carlton Stickles, by only 1,839 votes. Mahoney went on later that year to be defeated by Spiro Agnew. The result of all of this is that the candidates are micro-targeting voters. They're focusing the resources on specific regions or constituencies to the exclusion of a broader statewide strategy. Most have not bought costly broadcast television advertising, and no ads have been aired. By the second week of April 2014, the Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown and Attorney General Doug Gansler had introduced themselves in television spots already and were airing their first of their attack ads. But television ads in the Washington suburbs, home to 40% of Maryland Democrats, can cost $600,000 per week, and no one has the money to speak to the voters that way. 4 years ago, Democrats spent $21.5 million in the primary election, 11.2 by Lieutenant Governor Brown, 7.5 million by Attorney General Gansler. This year, in January, the 7 Democrats together had barely $5.7 million cash on hand. Person with the most cash on hand, Kevin Cabinets, had $2 million. Jim Shea had $1.3 million. Ruth Shern Baker, the Prince George's County executive, had $696,000 on hand. These totals were buttressed slightly by the Lieutenant Governor reports. The ones that didn't have Lieutenant Governor candidates in January were specifically required to issue reports on April 17th. Here in Montgomery County, Julie Verratti, co-owner of Denzing Brewery Company in Silver Spring, had $102,000 on hand. She is working with the gubernatorial candidate, Alex Ross. Valerie Irvin had approximately $50,000 on hand. She's the lieutenant governor candidate with Kevin Canavan. Susan Turnbull had $244,000 cash on hand. Susan is the lieutenant governor candidate with Ben Jealous. Putting this all in context with the cash on hand that Hogan Rutherford have $9.03 million, and they don't have a primary campaign. All of this is important because the next governor is going to lead the consideration of legislative and congressional redistricting after the 2020 census. And in fact, they will be, again, not unlike in Montgomery County, appointing heads of executive agencies, reviewing legislation, reviewing state contracts through their membership on the Board of Public Works. In Montgomery County, there are 8 districts, 1 senator and 3 delegates in each. All of the districts have at least 1 open seat, and many candidates have emerged to vie for those seats and to challenge incumbent legislators. The General Assembly meets annually for 90 consecutive days each year, beginning on the 2nd Wednesday in January. The members of the General Assembly will act on over 2,500 pieces of legislation, as well as the state's operating and capital budgets. The only bill they were required to pass each year is a balanced operating budget. The governor of Maryland has the strongest executive budget power in the United States. The governor submits the budget, and the General Assembly can only cut, they cannot add to that budget. In 2018, there were 3,127 bills and joint resolutions introduced. 890, or 28% of them, were passed. Many of those bills have a direct impact on the success of businesses in Montgomery County and in Maryland. Sick leave, minimum wage, tax incentives for companies like Marriott, and to encourage Amazon to consider coming to Montgomery County. In Congress, you're likely to be hearing about most about the midterm elections if you're watching the pundits talk on any radio station or TV. Maryland has 2 senators. Senator Ben Cardin's 6-year term ends, and he's running for re-election. There are 8 Democrats running for this seat, including Chelsea Manning, who many of us have heard of, and 11 Republicans. There are also 3 congressional districts that touch Montgomery County. In District 3, John Sarbanes is the incumbent, and in District 8, Jamie Raskin is the incumbent. However, both have challengers. In District 6, incumbent John Delaney is running for president, and 8 Democrats and 4 Republicans are running for his open seat. So this race will provide additional people for you to sort through.
Excellent. So that was a great, terrific overview, not only of the gubernatorial race and the State House, the Maryland General Assembly, but also the importance of money. And we are not spending a lot of time talking about that today, but public financing in Montgomery County is also a factor that has brought out a lot of candidates, and you may see information about that in news articles and things. So that's a lot of information to take in. I'm going to skip forward to the slide that shows a sample ballot. If you were a resident in Maryland Congressional District 6, State Legislative District 15, and Council District 2, this is what your sample ballot is going to look like. You can see the governor, and again, this is Democrats, because in a closed primary, you get the ballot of the nominees in the party with which you're registered. So the Republican ballot looks quite different. They are available on that same State Board of Elections website, so you can go look at that. But here for the Democrat in that living in that particular area, you see the gubernatorial candidates in the first column, comptroller, attorney general, U.S. senator, Congress in 6, all the candidates running for that seat. And the state senator, Brian Feldman, is the incumbent, and he's being challenged. The third column on that first page is all the people running for the 3 delegate seats. You have up to 3 choices there. Then you have the county executives running with 1 choice there. And then on page 2, you can see the 33 names of the people running for the Democratic nominations for the 4 at-large seats on the county council. Again, this is District 2, so you see the candidates for District 2. And then, as Leslie mentioned, there are a number of other important races: judges, state's attorney, clerk of the circuit court, board of education, and the Democratic Central Committee also uses this ballot to elect members for that body. So how do you make sense of all of that, all of those names? There are a couple things that we recommend you do. First, use the mdelect.net website to find out who your current elected officials are. This is important, especially if you're not sure what district you live in and who might be your current representatives. So once you know which races you are going to be voting in, then you can start to focus in on who those candidates are and find out more about who is running and learn more about them. You can use their own websites. There's some limited news coverage. The Washington Post just published a story about the county executive race, and we hope that they will do more as we get closer to the primary election on June 26th. Bethesda Beat and other blogs are covering. Bethesda Beat's a magazine, but there are also blogs that are covering the election. There are interest groups that publish questionnaires, including MCCC. We have a business-oriented questionnaire, and many of the candidates have submitted their answers to that, and they're on our website. I'll show you that page in just a second. And then the League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan organization, will publish a voter's guide in the coming weeks that gives basic biographical information and ways to learn more about the candidates. For incumbents, you can also, for those are the people who are in the office now, you can go and look at their records on the state Maryland General Assembly website. It's pretty easy to go in and find your legislator and see what they've done, what their record is. It's not as clear-cut on the county council, but you can poke around and see who's voted for what. As I mentioned, on our website at MCCC, under our advocacy tab, we have a special page that we've created about the elections. And then under that page, we have the candidate questionnaires. I didn't want to make the screenshot so small that you couldn't see anything. So it's here in 2 pieces, but it is a long page. It shows kind of what the basic information that we provided to them in the questionnaire, and then the red highlights on the right-hand side of the screen are the list of at-large and District 1 and District 2, and then it goes on and on through that web page of the individuals who have submitted a questionnaire, and we've posted it for all of you to read. We've hosted a few events here to meet the candidates, and we will look at scheduling some more in the coming weeks. And there are probably meet and greets happening in your neighborhoods and with other associations. And there are also forums. In fact, there is one a week from today with the county executive candidates. MCCC is joining with other organizations to host Honor Bombasu, who many of you might know is a respected economist from Maryland, who's going to talk about some of the economic indicators specific to Montgomery County. And then the second half of the morning will be spent with a moderated discussion. Bruce DePoit, who is a political reporter, will moderate as the 6 candidates for Montgomery County Executive, who you can see here, will talk about their ideas and plans and vision for economic development in Montgomery County. It's a free event. We do ask that you register ahead of time so that we'll have a sense of head count, but we also encourage you to share this information with your colleagues, friends, family, anybody who has an interest in the success of Montgomery County. Really should come out and listen to this event. So with that, I'm going to turn unless we have any questions at this point. Does anybody have some more questions before I turn the microphone back to Gigi to bring it all home? Okay, All you, Gigi.
All right, great. Thanks, Ilya. And thank you all for tuning in today. First of all, I want you to appreciate and to know that we are doing everything we can to bring you the best information, and we will be sending you information, posting information, and driving you to events where you'll be gathering yet more of it. We want you to think of MCCC as your trusted resource and ask us if you have questions. It's a good day when we get a call, the quickest email, a text message. Many of you have my cell phone or any of our cell phones. We are happy to help you because this is a complicated, unusual, and as John said earlier, truly historic election for us because we have so many people running for office. So it is most important that you take time to check on your registration. It's important that you register to vote so that you can cast a ballot in the primary election on or before Tuesday, June 26th, the day that these important decisions about our elected officials will be made. If it's June and it's Tuesday, you have an action item. On Tuesday, June 5th, that's the deadline to register or update your party affiliation. You can do that today, as soon as we're finished with this webinar. John?
It's important to note that even if you change your party affiliation for the primary election, you can change it back after the primary election is over.
That's
so if you're a lifelong Republican, but you want to vote in this primary because you want to vote for, kind of help choose the Democratic candidates, there's nothing that stops you before the general election from switching back to being a Republican. So again, important to note.
And of course, the general election is open. So even if you're a registered Democrat and you want to vote for a Republican, there's nothing stopping you for voting for a Republican or an independent in the general election in the fall. So that's a good point, John. I'm glad you made that. So remember, by Tuesday, June 5th, you must deal with your registration and take a close look and make sure that you're in the party primary where you want to vote. On Tuesday, June 19th, we have the deadline to request an absentee ballot. That's a deadline. So you can do that today. You can go online, and if you're a busy person and you think there's any possibility that you're going to be traveling in the month of June for family reasons or your work, I urge you to request and obtain your absentee ballot. From June 14th to the 21st, early voting begins at locations around the county, and we will have that information available for you. It'll be readily available in many places, but we encourage that as an option. And of course, we'll post that information. And then there's Tuesday, June 26th, primary election day. Ultimately, we have Tuesday, November 6th, our general election day, but our primary will have a big determination on who will be running on that day. So I can't encourage you enough to go vote. Tell your friends, your family, your colleagues, your employees, everyone that you know that it's important for them to vote, because in a year which is an off year and with a low likely voter turnout, every single vote counts. Your vote counts more than ever.
And we do have a question, so Leslie's going to take the question.
Sure. There's a question here about clarifying the number of votes that people have available to them as an individual when you're casting a ballot. Unlike when we remember our school elections where you had to pick one, in many of the races on the ballot, you have more than one vote to allocate. So there are two places where you're going to have to choose just one candidate. The gubernatorial primary, for instance, is one. The county executives race is for one. But when we're talking about state delegates and the county council at large races, you have more than one vote to allocate. You can't assign. It's not one of those sort of fun raffle things where you can put all your votes in one basket. You do have to pick from the number of choices you have, but you can pick to the max. So in your state legislative districts, you should be, you want to consider casting 3 votes for delegate among the choices of the candidates that you're going to have, because the top 3 vote getters in those races will be the candidates who will appear on the ballot in November, and in a heavily Democratic district, presumably be the elected officials when they are sworn in January. Similarly, at the county council at-large race, among those 33 candidates, you have 4 votes to allocate. And it's a fabulous question because there's been some recent analysis done of primary voting over the last few years, and it looks like most voters only choose 3. I don't know why. We joke around about people never being able to remember more than 3. But in a race like this, where you have so many good choices in that group of 33, we strongly urge you to consider casting that 4th ballot. So you do have 4 votes to allocate in the county council at large races. And make sure you tell your friends. And if you have a large enough front yard, put out 4 signs for your 4 favorites. Because there really is an opportunity here. You're not forced into a box to choose just one of among. There are several qualified individuals in the races. At the same time, I'm reminded, if you really feel strongly about just one person, by all means, please cast that vote as well.
So we have another question, and that question, I'm going to read that question. It's, I know you can't endorse candidates, but what is the best way for us to connect with other like-minded MCC members to figure out what slate would be best for us? So that's a good question because it's looking for that next level of guidance. And so what is happening on our end, there are a couple things going on. So we have sent out questionnaires to candidates for office. We ask questions that are relevant to our members on the issues that are important to us: economic development, the vitality, what are they doing about business climate issues, transportation, education, cost of living, very important. We ask those questions and then we post the answers in their own words on our website for you to see. And so that is one way to be informed about what's important to us. But as for the part of the question that has to do with, how do other people feel about it? Well, we do ally with other business organizations in our business coalition. Some of them do endorse candidates. So you're going to get much more guidance in that direction. So some of those would be, for example, AOBA, GCAR, that's the Realtors Organization.
MBIA.
Yes, and MBIA. There are some other organizations that are business organizations that are making endorsements. Many of them have political action committees as well. We do not. But we do take a lot of questions from our members who ask us what is the position of a particular candidate, and we're happy to help flesh that out on how they voted on issues that are important to you that might not have been captured in the questionnaire.
I would certainly, Gigi, to that, this is Leslie, I would add, if you are a member of any organization that has sponsored a forum or a program, to attend and talk to your fellow members about what their impressions were from what the candidate said, whether that, and even if that organization offers endorsements. There are some folks who, if you remember playing a card game with a 10-year-old, will do oppositional voting as well. So, you take a look at the endorsements by a group that perhaps you are not aligned with, and you will vote, again, not cast your ballot for those candidates that they are endorsing. So there are sources of information out there from other organizations that should help guide you.
We have another question. Will this webinar recording be made available? And the answer is yes. That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. So we are going to make that available to on our website. I see another question's popped up. Are there races that could be decided in June, and which are they? Well, Leslie, over to you. And John, yes.
Well, given the events in the American political landscape over the last 2 years, I would never presume to say that anything's a lock until we get to November. On the other hand, all of our historic indicators are that in Montgomery County, the Democratic primary will determine the ultimate person who takes office in December or in January for the county executive race and for the county council. And certainly, I suspect most of our state legislative districts. John, would you agree?
I totally agree, absolutely. Particularly, I don't think, even though all of those races have some nominal Republican opponents, I think that if you look at history in Montgomery County, the Democratic primary is going to be where a lot of those decisions are made.
I think at the federal level as well, congressional districts 3 and 8 look to be strongly leaning Democratic. There does seem to be a competitive race shaping up in Congressional District 6 between whoever is the ultimate Democratic nominee and then who the Republican nominee will be. And that's consistent with both of their last two elections as well, which were hotly contested races and a lot of activity.
And that's why we've encouraged people to think differently about how they're registered to vote, to be sure that they're participating in this primary to the fullest. And in that case, and in this county, that means considering registering to vote in the Democratic primary so that you can participate, have your voice heard, and it will have a huge influence on the outcome of that election.
Great. Well, we have covered a lot of material in a record amount of time, I would say. You know, if we have any other questions, we'd be happy to take them, but we also want to be respectful of your time. Again, this is recorded. We will be sending each of you a link to it directly to your emails because we have that through your registration. We will post it on our website. We hope that if you found it useful and helpful, that you will share it with your colleagues and friends and family members who are still confused and don't even realize that there's a primary election in less than 70 days. And we would really value any feedback you have if we are able to do another live webinar between now and June, or again before the general, any information that you think would be helpful to include in future broadcasts, that would be terrific. Just one more reminder, there's a great opportunity to come out next week on Friday to hear about economic indicators, to see some of the county executive, well, all 6 of the county executive Democratic nominees will be on the stage. And we have also invited all the candidates for all the other races, county council, board of education, state general assembly. Many of the candidates will be in the audience as well. We've asked them not to campaign, so you won't be inundated, but they will be there meeting and greeting. They'll have some literature. So really, it is a pretty efficient way to find out who some of these people are, what their background in business is, and what their vision is for leading Montgomery County forward.
That's exactly right. And that's a free event. So we encourage you to register so we know you're coming. But come no matter what on Friday, April 27th to the Universities at Shady Grove. Again, historic election, an incredible opportunity to have them answer important questions about the future of our county and our region when it comes to economic development. That is the question. These are people who believe that you should trust them with the future of our economy, and it's a great opportunity for you to hear it first right from them and ask them questions as well. So we hope we'll see you next Friday, a week from today, at Universities at Shady Grove. Again, free forum brought to you by many organizations that think it's important for you to have access to these candidates for county executive.
And that flyer is also a PDF available to you as a handout, so feel free to share that widely as well, because we'd love to have the room full of people who really are vested in the success of Montgomery County.
So I think it's a great opportunity for final parting shots, which is done on so many other great shows. So if we've got any parting shots, I would love to hear that from our panelists. Leslie?
My only parting shot is that it's finally spring, so get out there this weekend and enjoy some of the beautiful places we have in Montgomery County.
Yay. John?
It doesn't feel like spring.
Well, it looks like it from here, but anyway. Leslie?
Yeah.
Elia?
Let me just use this opportunity to thank Leslie and John and Gigi for their leadership on advocacy on behalf of our members. Really, they're working all the time to remove barriers and create opportunities for all of our members. And today's webinar is really meant to help educate and inform and give you the tools so that you can be with us as we create a better environment for all of us to be able to succeed. Thank you to our panelists for being here.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Done.